And thank you for joining us here on the Neutral Zone. I am Phil Milani, joined as always by my partner in crime, my esteemed colleague. Really, the best way to describe this person is my everything. It's at Aric DiLalla.
What up, Phil? It's Dub Day.
It's Dub Day, and I think that a lot of the Broncos' success against the Chargers can, come back to what we did here in this studio last Thursday.
That's right. When you win a football game, you often hear that it's what you do on Wednesday, it's what you do on Thursday, on Friday. It's the preparation
it's
that prepares you to win.
And I think that the origins of the victory, it originated right here in this studio.
That's right. We, last week we made a mistake. We made some mistakes. We looked at the film. We said it's correctable. And we corrected it by getting rid of Ben Swanson.
Yes. Look, no Ben Swanson, they win a bunch of games.
They win.
Ben Swanson comes back, they lose.
They lose.
Ben Swanson goes away, they win. I mean, that's not coincidence.
It's not, and it's not complicated. It's science.
It's science.
We follow the science.
Yes, it's a binary.
And I don't know, people like Ben Swanson, but we're doing what we have to do here.
Sometimes Sean Payton says you have to be tough.
Yep.
Mentally tough, physically tough.
Yep.
And we made a tough decision.
We needed both. We had to mentally decide to remove Ben Swanson, and then physically we had to remove him.
Yeah.
And with that axe, he's dangerous.
Yeah.
And so
exactly. The beard.
The
beard was there.
It was a little terrifying, but we got him out.
And they keep winning.
And they win. So Ben Swanson will not be on this show.
He will not be on. It's too critical.
Hopefully till the end of February.
Yeah, exactly. Then he can return.
Yeah.
Until then, no more.
No.
He was crying this morning.
Yeah.
We're like, we're going to go do the podcast
put the
now.
axe down, you crazy guy.
Yeah.
He was like, let me back.
Yeah. Nope.
Sorry.
So, of course, the Broncos, a road win in the division, 24-7 against the LA Chargers. First time since 2019, Aric.
Joe Flacco.
Yeah. Against the Chargers.
Against the Chargers?
Yeah.
The Broncos' last 3 division road games, all against the Chargers.
Wins.
Sorry, yeah. Division road wins.
Yeah.
All against the Chargers.
Yeah.
The Broncos' 17-point margin of victory, Phil, was their largest division win since the last week of 2016.
This sounds like an at Aric DiLalla Twitter account.
That was nice.
That was a good stat.
Nice. They're 7 points allowed, the fewest in a division game since the last week of 2016.
I thought they were going to get a shutout.
I thought so too.
I thought that was happening.
It would have been the first road shutout since '92, I believe.
Yeah. Easton Stick.
You were only in your 20s at that point.
Yeah, I was just a young guy.
You young guy, kind of like I'll be here in
energy.
5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
Phil, I liked what stood out to me. A lot of good quotes after the game. Obviously, I'm there. I'm getting quotes.
You're cool. Yeah, you're getting
names.
Yeah, you're taking
doing
notes.
Stats. I'm doing X's.
Yep.
And Sean Payton said, "There's another demon that we've checked off our list."
Oh yeah, exactly.
Talking about the road wins against the division. And, he's right. You beat the Chiefs, you win that streak. And this division road streak, there was a primetime streak you knock off. And the Broncos just keep, we talked last week, hey, I'm worried based on the way the last 7 years have gone.
No, they bounce back.
This team it's diff.
Yeah, I mean, and Russ throwing that interception on the very first play of the game, you're like, oh, my gosh. But it didn't affect them. The defense came back out there, got the stop.
Big
Interesting
play.
4th down call there.
Yeah, I would have done one that scored a touchdown if I were the Chargers.
Yeah, exactly.
That's me.
Or be like, hey, it's actually 3rd down, but let's pretend it's 4th down. Yeah. And then if you don't get it, then say, okay, fine. Then you're like, okay, we didn't get it.
Yeah.
Could do that.
Some teams do that.
Yeah. They showed some toughness there, I think, bouncing back from that, bouncing back from the Texans loss. And they really it felt like they were playing Broncos football again, They set a physical tone, ran the ball well with Javonte, a lot of short passes, I thought. Like they got Mims involved early. They hit Jeudy on a little slant. They certainly used Samaje Perine a bunch. That's sort of like the formula there. And then all of a sudden, boom, you hit the deep one to Cortland Sutton. That's sort of like if you're making a little cake or something for a Broncos win, you look at the recipe, all of those are the ingredients.
Yep.
And then you put it in the oven, boom, Broncos win.
That's right. I believe the Broncos are now 7-1 when they win the turnover battle.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, they had 2 takeaways. And so
2 takeaways. You put yourself ahead, and then late in the game, that pass rush can really get going. The defense, Phil, continues to play well.
Oh, my goodness. 6 sacks. I think 9 pressures.
9 times.
9. And it's coming from everywhere. Eric, you don't really know what's going to happen. Is it going to be Singleton up the middle?
Definitely don't.
Is it going to be P.J. Locke? Is it going to be Jayquon McMillan?
Yep.
You know, the pressure's coming from everywhere. And McMillan had 2 sacks? Yeah. Or I guess they said that was a forward pass, so that didn't
he almost
really
had a tutty. He almost went to tutty town.
You know how hard it is to strip the ball, then go pick up the ball, and then run it in?
He didn't make it look very hard. It looked easy.
Easy. He did the easy one.
Yeah.
Man, if he would have there just like 1 second earlier, boom.
We were in Tinseltown. He almost went to Tutty Town.
Yeah, exactly. He almost left Tinseltown.
You left, yeah. 1 sack for him.
He had one earlier. He almost had the 2.
Yeah.
So
almost.
Yeah, P.J. Locke had the first fumble.
And there was this narrative after the game, Phil, that Justin Herbert getting knocked out of the game. Oh, that really changed it. We didn't have a chance after that. That was kind of Staley's message, maybe.
Oh, but they were getting after Herbert, too.
Herbert? They didn't do anything.
Yeah, they got after Justin,
6
too.
possessions with Herbert, Phil. Punt, turnover on downs, pick, punt, turnover on downs.
Yeah.
90 yards and 6 drives.
The Jonathan Cooper
4
interception
sacks.
was nice. That really sort of helped turn the tide, too. And he kind of went down awkward there. I was like, ooh.
Yeah, the hip drop.
That was not a good
45.2 quarterback rating for Herbert.
Yeah,
this was not a game that the Broncos won because the backup quarterback came in.
Yeah. I think that when Herbert threw that interception and then they scored immediately like that, you kind of felt like, oh, this is the sort of just the Broncos' day. And I think that seeing that Chargers team, it felt like maybe like a Broncos team from like the last few years where, you're just not really in the playoff chase there. Things haven't gone your way during the season. You're not sure what the future holds. That kind of felt like that sort of Chargers team. And when the Broncos scored that touchdown there, it kind of like, at least watching the game on TV, Eric, it felt like the air went out of the building a little.
Yeah, well, there were more Broncos fans there than.
Yeah, but for the Chargers,
jacked up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
the most excited it was all day.
It was loud. That Troutman touchdown, if you were just listening to that, you're like, this is a Broncos home game.
Yeah,
it was crazy.
A lot of orange.
Yeah,
a lot of Broncos fans. Yeah, Phil, this team, it isn't always pretty. It isn't always perfect. It takes them a while sometimes to get going, and it's often offensively it's not perfect, but then there's a big play, and then there's a takeaway, and they kick a field goal, and before you know it, you look up and you're like, oh, the Broncos are up 17-0.
Yeah,
or the Broncos are up 17 points, and it just they're kind of relentless, and they just stick with it.
Methodical.
They don't beat themselves.
Yeah,
and before you know it, you look up and you're like, okay, the Chargers just scored a touchdown. They still really don't have a chance here.
Yeah, well, I did think that drive after the Chargers touchdown was impressive. I think it was 13 plays. It took more than 7 minutes off the clock. They converted a bunch of third downs on that drive. And then, of course, the hammer was a nice little play design where Adam Troutman was wide open.
Wide open. 3rd
touchdown of the season from Adam Troutman. They say that they don't have a pass-catching tight end.
They got one.
Yeah. Kroll had a nice little
35-yarder.
Yeah, they're making things happen,
That I did see a tweet. Kroll got that 35-yard catch. It made him the 2nd leading tight end in receiving yards.
After the 1 catch?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. I do think they are missing Dulcich. Dulcich could just give them a little something they don't have. Yeah, but I thought that was an impressive drive where they just sort of said, it felt like maybe before that they were just trying to say, hey, let's just get to the finish line here and end this game. But I do think that drive said the statement like, no, this is over.
This is our game. We've dominated you.
It's done.
And that's what the Chargers, after that 4th down stop in the red zone that began the game, they didn't really have – there was never a chance – or an opportunity where it was like the Chargers are about to tie this game or they're about to take the lead. There was no threat. Yeah, it was possible that it could have stayed a close game, but the Broncos were never in danger after that moment of losing the football game. And I think that's what good football teams do, playoff-worthy football teams do, is they take care of business against struggling football teams. And the Chargers undoubtedly are struggling right now. They've lost Justin Herbert. We'll see what happens with him if he plays in 2 weeks against the Broncos.
Fractured throwing hand index finger.
Yeah, that's going to be tough to grip the ball.
Yeah, and that's an important finger when you're
top 5 for sure.
I think that's the last finger to touch the ball. So that's that's what Matt Ryan was saying on the broadcast, that like, hey, your index finger is crucial. I think you could probably throw it like if you broke your pinky or something. It wouldn't be nice, but you could probably get through it. But you're not your index finger.
Well, also, what's the point now?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I think is a bigger deal for them. Is just, hey,
they're out of it.
Let's just
And you mentioned this team was struggling, which is true. But with 7 losses, that's kind of like you almost expect them to be. You get one last push, right? Of like, hey, if we win out, we're still right in there. When you get to 8 losses, it's pretty much done. And so you thought maybe you're going to get this last gasp attack from them, and it just shut them down.
Yeah, and that team still has a lot of playmakers. I mean, Keenan Allen, Khalil Mack was not really a factor in the game. They did a nice job. You got to give them some flowers there, just because so much talk this week about Khalil Mack.
He had 2 tackles and 1 quarterback hit.
Yeah, that's not. He had come into the game, I think, 3 straight games with 2 sacks. So that was a nice job. And Sean Payton was saying that some of their protection, they even call it Mac protection.
Max.
Yeah. He says it's Mac. It was good. So they did a nice job, I think, on Khalil Mack, especially after what Will Anderson had done the week prior. To come in and do a nice job there was important. Yeah,
and they had, 2 weeks ago, Myles Garrett comes in here as the NFL's leading sack recorder. Shut him down.
Zipped him up.
Now you face Khalil Mack, who was leading the NFL with 15 sacks, and shut him down too. Russ was sacked twice, I believe, for 8 yards.
Yeah,
and
that's good.
One of those was for 0 yards, and I actually thought he reached the ball across. But that
was good.
They took care of business there.
Yes.
And this was a defense that shut the Patriots out last week.
Yeah, Derwin James. I mean, they still got some talent there.
They held the Ravens offense to 20 points the week before. I mean, this is not an awful Chargers defense. And Broncos, they weren't, again, not perfect, but they were efficient enough.
Yeah, it wasn't like a barn burner, like they didn't throw the ball over the place, but what they did was they minimized mistakes. You mentioned the sacks there. They did what they do in terms of getting their guys involved near the line of scrimmage, and they scored touchdowns, Eric, which was important. Javonte got in there, first scoring touchdown this season. Obviously, the Sutton play was huge, and then the Troutman touchdown. I mean, they only had to settle for a field goal once, and that should have been a touchdown to Jerry Jeudy. So they were really much improved in the red zone, and that was another area of emphasis this last week coming off of that Texans game was, hey, how do we improve in the red zone? They certainly responded there.
Yeah, I mean, they easily could have scored 30 points yesterday. And, but I also think teams make mistakes sometimes that kill you in games, and even when the Broncos aren't at their best offensively, they tend not to make those terrible mistakes and at least flip the field. After that initial 4th down stop, the Broncos have the ball down by their own goal line, and they don't end up scoring on that next drive, but they
moved it a
8
little.
plays, 51 yards, 3 first downs. So they get all the way to the LA 43 before the drive kind of bogs down.
Yeah.
And then they're able to punt it, pin them down inside the 10-yard line, and now it sets up, now you're in a tough situation if you're the Chargers offense, sets up that interception. That's that won't go down as a scoring drive, but that was a big drive offensively to flip the field. And Sean
talked about that.
Yeah, just like the Buffalo game, they played a lot of the game on the Chargers side of the field, and it minimizes the mistakes when you make them and helps you maximize the when the Chargers do something poorly.
Yeah, I always think that's a little bit interesting when you hear Sean talk about these moments in the game, what he tends to highlight. And he highlighted that situation right there where he says, hey, when you're backed up, he says that his philosophy is let's get 2 first downs, then you're back to neutral. And so he talked about that drive, and then he also highlighted Riley Dixon as saying that he did a nice job, and
yeah.
I think that that is one area that we've not really spent much time talking about, but this Broncos special teams vastly improved from last year. It's one of the top units in the NFL. It's a top return unit for sure. And, they've done a lot of nice things in that area, especially when you think about new kicker, new punter, new returner. They've just changed that entire unit, and you're seeing that pay dividends.
Well, and there's even some, from a coverage standpoint, the last few years, teams have either broken one on the Broncos or they've, gotten big yardage, or you're just kind of holding your breath.
Yeah.
Yesterday, there was one, I don't know if it was the end of the first half or when it was, but yeah, it was right at the end of the first half. The Chargers tried to return it, and there was a second where there was some space, but then the Broncos were just all over it, and there was no threat at all. And I think that can't be taken for granted either, that you just we haven't had, knock on wood, haven't had that issue yet in terms of coverage or a team flipping the field, having that big return. I mean, yesterday the Ravens beat the Rams
on a
return touchdown. We haven't seen that issue yet for Denver.
Yeah, I mean, give a lot of credit to Ben Kadwika. Sean Payton calling Mike Westhoff out of the mountains, telling him to come back, and these guys have done a great job. Yeah. Like you mentioned, the Bills game, and then certainly yesterday, Sean Payton's really highlighted the fact that the Broncos are playing a lot of these games in the opponent's territory. So that's a nice job.
Yeah, and that all goes into, Sean Payton said this was one of our better team wins of the season in terms of offense playing pretty well, defense playing really well, special teams contributing. I mean, this is the type of football you want to be playing this time of year. And it's going to keep you in football games. It's going to keep you around. It's again, like you mentioned, it's the recipe for a win. And the Broncos now are 6-1 in their last 7 games. That's tied for the best record in the NFL since I believe week 7.
Because the Eagles they've dropped the last 2 here. So
yeah, I believe it's the Broncos, Ravens, and Cowboys that are tied for that record there. But and it's interesting. I know people don't view nationally the Broncos in that same conversation probably with the Ravens and Cowboys, which, in fairness, those are division leaders. Those are good teams that have, I think, lost 3 games each.
Yeah.
But you can't argue with the results, and the Broncos have knocked off some good teams during that stretch, and Phil, they put themselves in a really good position here as we enter the final 4 weeks.
Everybody keeps bringing up the fact that they started the season 1-5. And that is why the record is the way that it is, and they're sort of fighting here. But if you look at just the style of football that they're playing and the way they've rattled off these wins, this is the time of year when you want to be playing like the Broncos. And I think that, any team in the AFC or NFC, I think that you feel like you got a shot against these guys if you're the Broncos right now, and especially if they stick to how their style of football, how they want to play. I think if you stick to that, this Broncos team can really go toe-to-toe, especially if they don't beat themselves. So I do think that after the game, Russell Wilson said, look, there's still things that we got to work on. We can get better here. And obviously a big priority is going to be getting Jerry Jeudy into the mix here, trying to work on that chemistry. It seemed like they made a big effort against the Chargers to try and get him the ball. They weren't able to quite connect on a couple of deep plays. And you just think, Eric, maybe against a better team, they're going to need one of those to connect. And so if they can get that thing humming and they've got 2 legitimate wide receivers there, this team will be able to start putting up a lot of yards. And that's one area where I could see them start to continue to work on. And then if Dulcich is able to heal up a little bit, that's another thing that could give that side of the ball a little bit of a boost.
Yeah. And again, knock on wood, we keep saying this week after week, they've stayed pretty healthy.
Yeah, the Miners.
Yeah, Quinn Miners, but apparently it sounds like a couple reports that he'll be able to play this weekend. Maybe sounds like he's okay, so we'll see what the official injury reports and all that say, but that's a good sign. No update yet on Nick Bonito, but certainly the Broncos have some depth there at edge rusher with Jonathan Cooper, Baron Browning, Drew Sanders moved over there a little bit, and the way they're bringing P.J. Locke, Jayquon McMillan, Josie Jewell, Alex Singleton, I mean, Zach Allen, they've got rushers here, so we'll see how that goes. But Jerry Jeudy, 6 targets, which was a team high, just 2 catches for 16 yards, and kind of had 3 opportunities maybe that stand out in terms of 2 deep ones, and then the one in the end zone, not quite able to drag the foot. You got to find a way to get him going a little bit, but I think it's impressive that they're still able to, still get a deep touchdown to Cortland Sutton, still able to score 24 points when you miss really a couple opportunities like we talked about. And,
it did seem like, though, that even on the Sutton play, Sean Payton said that Jerry Jeudy was the number 1 option on that play. So just watching that game, looking at the targets, it did feel like they were like, hey, let's try and get Jerry going in this one. He ended with just the 2 catches, but that is something that it looks like they're saying, look, we need to get this guy going, because if we want to be a high-powered offense, he's going to have to be a part of this thing. So it does seem like that's an effort. But after the game, Sean did not seem like, at least what he said after the game was, hey, look, he's going to get this thing go right. He didn't seem as concerned as maybe all of Broncos country does.
All of them, yeah.
I mean, if you go on to X,
don't do that.
It was buzzing. He didn't seem as good. Sean Payton did not seem as.
And I think his point was, hey, there were a couple opportunities there. Wasn't able to make them.
Yeah,
but we won the football game.
Yeah, exactly.
And so let's not sit here and worry about how many targets, how many catches. We won the football game. I'm sure they'll work to correct things in practice.
Yeah.
Phil, this football team right now, if you were solely evaluating the season starting in week 7 or week 8, I think you'd be talking about the Broncos as a good football team, a contender. Whereas you're right, because of the way the season started, people I think are still like, well, this is a nice story that they've been able to turn things around. But the fact of the matter is they've been playing as good a football as anybody over the last 6 weeks.
Yeah. And, Sean Payton on Monday was asked about the sort of the playoff standings and how jumbled all these teams are. I think one thing that makes this particularly interesting, Eric, is the fact that a lot of these teams are playing with backup quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And you're just wondering, like, gosh, how long can like a Joe Flacco go out there and do this? These teams are playing with,
Mitch Trubisky.
Who are these guys? That's what somebody was saying the other day, but you're like, okay, how much sustained success can these teams have with their backup in there? It is going to be interesting to see what happens over this last 4 weeks of the season.
Well, and I think in terms of the race there, the exciting thing for Denver is that a lot of these teams play each other, whereas Denver does not.
No.
And so, like, the Colts play the Steelers coming up. The Browns are going to play the Bengals. Like these matchups, they're going to go head to head. I think the Browns play the Texans still.
Yeah.
Like some of these things are going to sort themselves out because they play each other. Whereas, the Broncos AFC matchups that are remaining are New England at home against a backup quarterback and Bailey Zappi, who admittedly played well.
He's been playing well
against Pittsburgh in an upset win that really helped the Broncos. We'll see what happens with Justin Herbert, but you could be looking at Easton Stick coming in here in a few weeks. And then, Aiden O'Connell, a backup in Las Vegas, a team that was shut out.
They just got shut out.
So I'm not saying it's easy and that the Broncos have that they're guaranteed to do it, but
no.
The win yesterday
it's favorable.
Guarantees that you're going to be in this going down the stretch. And
the schedule is favorable.
Yeah,
I think we can say that.
You've got a chance. And I thought Sean's answer was interesting in that he was asked specifically about the wild card race, and he said, we're looking at the division.
Yeah, exactly.
Because the Chiefs are just one game ahead, and if the Broncos were to win out and the Chiefs drop one of their division games, they've got a game against the Raiders, a game against the Chargers. If they somehow drop one of those, if they end with the same record, the Broncos would win the tiebreak.
Yeah.
And so you're looking at one more Chiefs loss, and then you'd have to go on a heater.
You'd have to go right there, but
But to have a chance, I mean, who would have thought after you lose in Kansas City in week 6 to go to 1-5 that you'd be one game back at Kansas City?
Yeah, and the Chiefs, like, I've never seen them that flustered as they were after that game against the Bills there. So
yeah, they're 2-4 in their last 6.
Yeah, they've not been
not quite right.
Yeah, exactly.
And they've played some good teams, right? Like the Eagles are a good team.
Yeah, the Bills are a good team.
Had to go on the road to play Green Bay.
Broncos.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean the Eagles were in the Super Bowl last year, so
yeah,
that's a really good team.
But they I even just the way that they've responded to the loss. I mean, I've not seen that from that Chiefs team.
No.
So that's something to just sort of keep an eye on here as we progress. I will say one last thing, Erica. Just it feels like the season's much later. I don't know if you agree with this, but like it feels like they've been in this like final stretch for
a long time
now. But if you really think about it, they're just entering now into the final quarter of the season, which is there's still a long way to go. But
there's a whole month left.
Yeah, but it feels very tight, and it's been sort of that tightness for a while now.
Yeah, I would say since the bye week, when you came out of that and beat Buffalo, it really felt like beginning with Minnesota, like that was the final stretch of the season. And like, Cleveland's, you got to win this one. And, Houston, this is the last, in the last stretch. And then certainly this week was a must win in terms of, and I think part of that is just where the Broncos started off, the way they began the season. You don't have that wiggle room. And Sean talked about that weeks ago at this point, but he said in New Orleans, they once started 0-4, fought back to 4-4, but that was just so mentally draining that they weren't able to maintain it. And I think what's been impressive for the Broncos is they've been able to maintain it. They got back to 500, got over it, fell back last week, and now are back over 500 again. And it doesn't feel like this team is like mentally drained from that. It's more like they're excited. Justin Simmons was talking about, we're fired up to go into this final stretch.
Yeah, because they've never really experienced this thrill of winning like this. And so I would imagine that they're energized and excited to just see what they're capable of. I mean, it did feel like that game yesterday, it sort of felt like how things used to be with the Broncos, where you're supposed to win the game, you just go there, you beat them, and you come back and you continue on, with business as usual.
What's interesting to me, Phil, is that this team has won some games pretty handedly. Like they beat the Browns by 17. Is that right?
Yeah, that was comfortable.
They beat the Chargers obviously yesterday by 17. But then you look at the stat sheet, and there's not somebody that played amazing. It's not like Cortland Sutton had 175 yards and 2 touchdowns.
It's not requiring like heroic efforts,
right? Or we talk sometimes about preparing for who's going to be AFC Player of the Week. Do we have anybody this week?
Yeah,
it hasn't been every week like win over Minnesota. It hasn't been every week where you've got a potential Player of the Week candidate. Where some teams win and it's like, okay, AJ Brown went off for 180 and 2 touchdowns, or Josh Jacobs had 200 yards, or Khalil Mack goes crazy and has 2 sacks or whatever. The Broncos are just kind of winning as a team.
Yeah.
And there's no like one individual that's been spectacular. I mean, obviously Cortland's made a lot of plays over the course of the season.
Yeah.
But it's not like he's had a 3-touchdown game.
Yeah. And I will say, I think at this point we've seen enough from PJ Locke and Jayquon McMillan to be like, this is more than, okay, these guys have had a couple of good games. Yeah. They've been a little bit of a spark or some, that kind of a guy. No, these guys are, it seems like they're genuinely good football players now. I mean, they've done it consistently game after game where they're making plays that are impacting the outcome.
Yeah, I didn't tweet it yesterday because I thought it was like a little crazy to put into words, but Jayquon McMillan feels like the defensive MVP.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, just he brings a lot of versatility. He's able to get after the quarterback. He's good in pass coverage. He creates turnovers. He's done a lot for this defense.
And for where the Broncos were at nickel, playing
with Kaywan Williams. Yeah, exactly.
Earlier in the year. I mean, Kaywan never played this season, but to go from Bassey to the way that Jayquan's playing, it's unbelievable. And that's, no disrespect to Isang. Like, obviously, a good football player that had some success here, but Jayquan's he's kind of transformed what you can expect and what you can do with that nickel position. That's really hard to find a lot of the times.
And even with the safety with K-Jack, being suspended, PJ has really been an unsung hero too, where, if you remove him out of the lineup, there's some question marks all of a sudden, but he's stepped up and played well. And Sean was asked about it today, like, hey, you're going to have a tough decision coming up here in a couple of weeks when K-Jack comes back. So,
yeah. And you would take it, I think Sean's point was, we'll figure that out when we get there.
Yeah, it's still a little ways away, but the way that PJ is playing, it's going to be hard to take him off the field, Eric. I'll just say that.
No, I agree with that. He's got. I love his attitude. Like he's
oh my gosh,
fiery. A little bit edgy.
And he can hit now. I mean, he's a big dude.
Yeah, he's got like a little K-Jack to him in terms of that element.
Yeah.
Phil, and we'll preview the Lions game later this week, but I'm excited for this game not because. I don't view this as a must-win the same way that like coming,
conference game,
a conference game, and certainly I think this win over the Chargers. Now you've got to find a way to win 3 of 4, but it just feels, two of the games are at home, so like those feel like must-wins, and the Raiders game, just breaking that streak and getting another demon off your back would be big. This feels more like an opportunity where, hey, the Broncos have won 6 of their last 7. They've beaten some good teams. I think people are starting to take them seriously. Can you go out there and send a message that, hey, we're going to beat a good football team, a division leader on the road in December, solidify? If the Broncos win this week, they're in great shape. I think their playoff odds go up to like 75, 80%. Can you go out there and do that and send a message that we're not just a cute little story that's come back from 1-5. We're going to be a tough out in the playoffs if we get there.
Yeah. And the other interesting thing, obviously, is the Dan Campbell and Sean Payton's situation here. I mean, Sean talked about that on Monday, just saying that, hey, I've known this guy for a really long time, all of the different stops, that they've been together. And then, of course, earlier this year, Sean Payton, picked the Lions as sort of like an example of what this Broncos team could be, and like said, hey, if we can just galvanize and come together, we could be a lot like that Lions team that turned things around last year. And they've sort of followed that script a little bit here, where they've really come together, and now they're making a run at the playoffs. So
heard it here first.
Yeah, we of course we brought that up before Sean did. So of course he's a listener.
Cutting edge.
Coach, I hope you're enjoying this one, listening here. But I will say it's just interesting that you highlight that team as maybe what you could be.
Now you're playing
You've done it, and then now you're playing them.
In a big game.
In a big game. And, of course, Dan probably is coming into this one a little extra fired up, just being like, I want to show Sean what I can do as a coach.
Well, and they lost a tough one on the road in Chicago, and
they've sort of come back down to earth a little bit, if you ask me, just after what happened on Thanksgiving last week against Chicago. Now they're not sort of this invincible team anymore.
Yeah, so they were losing to Chicago and then came back at home, right? And then they lost to somebody pretty badly on Thanksgiving. Green Bay.
Packers,
yeah. And then
they got blown out, really.
And then
home.
this game, a 15-point loss in Chicago. So they've had their struggles the last few weeks.
Still a talented squad that's going to come in and be a difficult.
And they run the football,
team.
which, as we know, the Broncos have had struggles with at times. So it'll be interesting there. But it feels like a big opportunity. And when we first talked about that Lions comparison, Phil, we were talking about it in terms of next year.
Yeah, exactly.
We were like, could you win, 5 of your final 8 and just have something to feel good about, go on a little bit of a run. Yeah. And instead they've won 6 of 7, and knock on wood that they do what the Lions could not do last year, which is make it all the way to the postseason. Yeah. Because the Lions came up 1 game short last year, but this transformation, I think, Phil, has happened quicker than we could have imagined.
Yeah. And I will say, more than just an opportunity, I will be interested to see if the Broncos can stack a couple of wins here this week. I do think it's important for this team to not fall into a pattern of win 1, lose 1, win 1, lose 1.
They won 5 in a row.
Yeah, but then they lost to Houston, bounce back this week, keep it going. You know, like, and it's a third road game in a row. Like, talk about the toughness that it takes to every week go on the road and play your best football. That's a challenge in itself.
Right. The only thing I meant there is that a 3-game road trip is really difficult. It's
really
a short
hard.
week.
It is.
You've got to go on the road to play a division leader that's probably angry that they lost last week to a division rival. And so you could go. I still want to go see them play good football.
Yes.
But if you were to lose a close game on the road, I wouldn't be like,
crushed.
The season's over.
Yeah.
You know, you still have an opportunity to come back and beat a 3-10 New England team and beat a Chargers team that has a backup quarterback and go into the last game of the season against the Raiders with a chance to get into the postseason. This would give you, right now you've got a little wiggle room, I think. If you lose this weekend, it eliminates that wiggle room.
Yeah.
And so, hey, I'd love a win this week, and I think they're capable of doing it if they play like they did against the Chargers, if they play the way they did against Buffalo, against Kansas City. You certainly can go there and get a win. Because it's not a conference game, because of some of the, because every other team on your schedule that you have left has a losing record compared to Detroit, it just feels like one that, like part of the reason that winning against LA was so important is because now it gives you, hey, you don't have to go on the road and beat a division leader just to get a chance at being in the postseason.
Yeah. Agreed.
So, but I still hope they win. Still think they're very capable of winning.
Yeah.
I think they've got the momentum to go do it. It just doesn't. It doesn't feel like the sky will fall if they don't win this weekend.
Yeah. And yesterday, like going into that game, you sort of just were thinking, hey, if you want to make the playoffs, this as a team, you just need to win this.
Yes.
And if you don't win this one, like you really probably shouldn't be in the playoffs.
Yes,
so
I agree.
It kind of felt like that. And they went to LA and took care of business. So.
Right. And that's how I feel about some of these other games coming up. Like no disrespect to the Patriots, but you should beat a 3-10 football team at home.
If you want to be a playoff team. Yeah. That's sort of how I feel about it too. So this is going to be an interesting one. Sean said that really the schedule will stay roughly the same except on Friday, maybe more of a walkthrough type of deal on Friday. And then after practice, they'll travel to Detroit.
Right. And it did seem, I don't know if it was the body clock or what, but it did seem like the Broncos were more ready to go against the Chargers with that 1 p.m. kickoff, which felt like 2:30 here.
Yeah.
As opposed to a week ago when it felt like an 11 a.m.
early
kickoff.
Yeah, it felt like an
and
early
again, you'll be playing in prime time, so don't have to worry about that. There's no more early kickoffs left on the schedule.
Yeah.
Who knows what happens in the postseason, but
yeah, you could play an early one there, but
I've been cautiously optimistic, Phil, this whole time since the Bills win. I'd say I've been cautiously optimistic they could do this.
That was a huge one.
I'm kind of leaning into now where I almost expect them to do this now.
Yeah, I mean, they're certainly capable of doing it if they play like they did yesterday.
Like I'd be bummed now if they don't make it. I'd be bummed. Whereas after the Buffalo game, I'm kind of like, oh, there's still a long way to go. There's still 7 or 8 games left. They'd still have to go 6-2. Like there's a lot that would have to go right for this to happen.
Yeah.
Now you're at a point where I'm starting to feel like they should be able to do this.
And they should have that same confidence too. Like the team should too. So what is it that Sean says? Like just getting confidence, you got to go out there and do it.
Yeah. Confidence is born from demonstrated ability.
Yeah. And they've demonstrated it.
Yeah.
So they should have that confidence where, hey, we can go on the road, beat anybody. We can take care of business at home. Like they should feel that confidence.
Right. And I'm sitting here like, oh, if they lose, it's not the end of the world. I guarantee you that's not their approach. And then I'm sure after going on the road to beat Buffalo, who, despite being 7-6, has the 3rd best point differential in the AFC and is a good football team, they beat the Chiefs at home. This team, I guarantee, they dominated an 8-win Cleveland team at home. These guys know they're good enough to compete with and beat these guys this week.
Yeah. And it does seem like if you get pressure on Goff, we'll go over the Lions a little bit more. But if they kind of do what they did last week against the Chargers, just bringing that pressure from a lot of different places, we've seen Jared Goff have some issues this year. So we'll get into it a lot more coming up. But for now, the Broncos 7-6, feeling confident. Crazy how this is just such a week-to-week deal, Eric, where you lose against the Texans, you feel down. You beat the Chargers, you feel like you could do anything. So
and they wouldn't have won this game in previous years. And that's I know these guys work hard and play hard and do their very best, but this team was not built to respond like this in previous years. And we've seen them go on the road and lose division games to teams that are not great and teams that they probably should beat.
Yeah.
And yesterday they left no doubt.
Yeah. No,
that's coaching.
Yeah, coaching and the leaders on this team have done a great job of just making sure that everybody is playing with that confidence. You know, I like what Russ said yesterday after the game. He said that during halftime of the Bears game, he went up to Vance Joseph and was like, "Hey, you're one of the better defensive coordinators in this league." And he said that just having gone up against Vance a lot, he's like, "Go do your thing, man."
Yeah.
And I think that just like that sort of belief and faith and, you know, all the things that Russ always talks about, those are important if you're able to turn things around the way the Broncos have. So you need that unwavering belief that you're capable of doing this.
Yeah, Mike McGlinchey. I mean, all these guys like, Mike said the same thing when they were 1-3 or or 0-3 and 1-5. Like, hey, I've seen teams turn this around.
Yeah,
and they have.
Yeah, exactly.
And now they put themselves where in December, 1 month ago in the season, everything is in front of them. And then we've heard guys say, you just get in and you never know what happens.
Oh, yeah. We've seen like the Giants with Eli.
Yeah.
You never get hot.
And there's so many teams that don't have their quarterback anymore that, knock on wood, Russ stays healthy. But the Broncos have their quarterback. They've got a lot of their guys.
Yeah.
We'll see. But it's amazing that they're in this position.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been a transformation.
It's fun.
It is fun. It's fun now on Sundays, like paying attention to all the other scores. Yeah. Being like, what do you want to have happen here? You're sort of rooting for teams that you never would normally root for. So it's exciting.
Well, and they're 7-6 now, which matches 2021. I believe if they win this weekend, or even if they were to get back to 8-7, say that's the best record they've had since 2016. And
8 would be the best. Yeah.
Yeah. So credit to all these guys.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll be back on Thursday with a nice little preview of this Saturday night matchup. Eric, like maybe you wake up Sunday morning, you're like, all right, I'm getting ready for some Broncos and Lions. No, it's Saturday night.
And don't miss it.
Don't wait until
that'd be
Sunday.
Bad. Then you would miss the game.
It'd be kind of sad. So you got to be ready to go. Outside the Broncos locker room, they have a huge countdown clock. Like to when kickoff is.
Oh, yeah?
That'll help the team know.
They'll know.
They'll
Maybe I'll
know.
just pop down there and look.
They're like, when are we playing again? Look at the countdown clock. That'll help them. So, and of course, Swanson will not be here.
No, absolutely not.
He will not be here.
Nope.
So, all right, that's going to do it for us. For Aric DiLalla, I am Phil Milani. You've been listening to
The Neutrals.